But I think you've actually identified a business question, which is how are you going to employ the person who used to get a pretty good living at a General Motors plant and who cannot get a pretty good living now? And I think that's a question. Peter seems to have an idea about where we might find jobs.
So I'll give you an example. One of the things that we're working on right now as a Next X Prize we announced in partnership with Qualcomm we're developing is called a Tricorder X Prize. And it's going to be a device that's got lab-on-a-chip capability. You can cough on it, you can do a blood finger prick, you can speak to it and so forth, and it can diagnose you. So you're going to start to have a disruption in the entire medical industry. What happens when this device is better than any group of board-certified doctors? And then all of a sudden, this device as well in a village in Africa to a minimally trained individual makes them the village doctor.
Right.
You can take that one step further, and you're going to start to have AI-enabled and technology-enabled devices that basically take people up the employment curve and make them professionals. Of course, the pressure now becomes what will happen to the medical profession or the legal profession. Now, I happen to think getting rid of the legal profession is a good idea, but that's my own personal opinion. So the question really is, you know, as we start to bring technology up, it's going to move a lot of people up and potentially out over the top. So it's creation of new jobs, but it's complete transformations of industries.
I agree completely with what Peter is saying in terms of technology-enabled, technology-driven, technology-facilitated economic growth and human capital employment. But I do not agree with, and I respectfully disagree with my university professor colleague, but certainly not my peer here, is that going to a university and getting a degree in sociology, even if you write really good essays, is not going to help your employer.
I agree. Well, let's let Isabel. Isabel has been dying to enter this debate, and let me make sure that she does.
I think that our real problem is consistency. We have reached a level of technology, and we have achieved a level of access to information, but we still have the same regulation. We have still the same admiration for large companies. You know, you have mentioned that only 52% of the largest companies in the world are American. You know, when the real revolution comes from the individual power, and we really will surpass this crisis with the power of many, with the real, it's not only the crowd wisdom that we can debate afterwards if you want, but it's also the power of small entrepreneurs, small companies, and we are still dealing with the same ways of education, first problem, same ways, and in that type of, in that way, I agree with you that university perhaps is not, is enough at the level that we have today.
Maybe Instituto de Empresa,
yeah.
not other things.
And then also the same way of getting the money or getting the resources to go live, you know, and that lack of consistency is what are making us suffer. And that is what we really need to change. That is the next generation. We have to, as Google did, we have to find a new way of improving and taking advantage of all the capabilities that we have now for free.
So let me ask you a question which you sort of raised. 10 years ago, I think, our in many cases, mutual friend Paul Sappho told me, it was more than that, it was 15, said that called the internet a full employment act for entrepreneurs. I think you could now say, you could use that phrase again about the cloud and mobility. You could say these are also new opportunities for a full employment act for entrepreneurs. So the question is, as we see the rollout of technologies and also as we see the continued story of globalization, and then like the internet, you know, globalization is a 25-year-old story and you ain't seen nothing yet. As we see these roll out, are we seeing more in the business of the future? Are we going to see large companies? Will large companies still play as big a role in the business ecosystem that they do now? Or will we see many more small companies networked together? Is it a big company future or a small company future?
The answer to that question, of course, is yes, but I think that you framed it in exactly the wrong way. Because you're going to have very large companies that don't employ a fraction of the people that large companies employed in the year 2000.
So sales huge, employment small.
The revenue to employee ratio is going to be transformed because of the brilliant innovations from people like SAP and the entrepreneurs represented here. And the one other area where I'm going to disagree with Professor Kaku is, you can't mass produce minds. Forgive me, but my serious academic background was AI. And if there's anything that we're focusing on, it's the ability to algorithmize, to use technology as a vehicle to either leverage individual minds or to usefully and cost-effectively automate or augment how people make decisions and how people create. So the economics are being transformed for this, and I think it's going to be a very interesting challenge how people are going to find jobs. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I know what the answer is not. The answer is not 4 years in college.
I'm going to pick a little quarrel with the word jobs because I think that may be the model that doesn't work.
I thought you meant Steve Jobs. Sorry.
No, well, one never picks a quarrel with him. But it may just be that the idea that for those of us who are Americans, the idea that the choice between a W-2 and a W-9 may just become a different choice in terms of how you add value. But yes.
Yeah, I must disagree with my esteemed colleague here. Okay.
First
of all, let me say that science is the engine of prosperity. From steam power to electricity to the laser to the transistor to the computer.
That's not true.
We're
That's
talking
technology.
about, hey,
technology.
can I have my say? Okay. Sure. You had your say. Let me have my say.
Yes.
However, the information revolution has a weakness, and the weakness is precisely the educational system. The United States has the worst educational system known to science. Our graduates compete regularly at the level of third world countries. So how come the scientific establishment of the United States doesn't collapse? If we're producing a generation of dummies, if the stupid index of America keeps rising every year, just watch network television and reality shows, right? How come the scientific establishment of the United States doesn't collapse? Let me tell you something. Some of you may not know this. America has a secret weapon. That secret weapon is the H-1B. Without the H-1B, the scientific establishment of this country would collapse. Forget about Google. Forget about Silicon Valley. There would be no Silicon Valley without the H-1B. And you know what the H-1B is? It's the genius visa, okay? You realize that in the United States, 50% of all PhD candidates are foreign-born? At my system, one of the biggest in the United States, 100% of the PhD candidates are foreign-born. The United States is a magnet sucking up all the brains of the world, but now the brains are going back.
Right.
They're going back to China. They're going back to India. And people are saying, oh my God, there's a Silicon Valley in India now. Oh my God, there's a Silicon Valley in China. Duh. Where did it come from? It came from the United States. So don't tell me that science isn't the engine of prosperity. You remove the H-1B visa and you collapse the economy. In Wall Street Journal, editorialized against a congressman who wanted to ban the H-1B, saying they'll take jobs away from the American people. The Wall Street Journal said, look, there are no Americans who can take these jobs. These are at the highest level of high technology. They don't take away jobs for Americans. They create entire industries. And so that's why we have an Achilles heel, and that's the educational system. And again, sociology majors are not necessarily going to be the ones determining the future of Silicon Valley, but physicists, engineers. We need more of them, not less.
The irony is, I agree with the immigration issues, what you're saying, and I'm at a school, of course, and Peter's a graduate of a school where indeed immigration.
Your school wouldn't exist without the H-1B.
Of course, but I'm not.
We've got to get back to the future of business.
But hold on a second. I'm not. No. I'm not arguing against an H-1B. I completely agree with this issue, and the point on the future of business that he's making, which is very, very important, is the nature of human capital. What is misunderstood here is, again, how poorly run schools are. MIT is a notable exception in this regard. His school His school is not, because what happens is they run in these introductory science and engineering classes at Illinois and Wisconsin and Michigan. They run freshman and sophomore years as flunk-out operations. They do it they run it as a boot camp, and then people are surprised that people don't take science, that they don't take the STEM courses. The point that I'm trying to make, which I think is an important one in this regard, is that the way educational systems are set up right now is that we have distorted incentives that undermine the ability for America to have a homegrown science and technology system. Immigration is a wonderful child of immigrants.
I want to move this just to say, I want to move this from an American conversation to a global conversation. It is a global economy and so on. I mean, obviously, to those of us who are Americans, this matters hugely politically, but as we talk about the future of business, one pretty clear thing is that it's going to be increasingly borderless. And one of the questions we sort of want to ask is, if you're wearing your CEO hat, some of these implications might be where you're going to put your headquarters. Are you going to put your headquarters in Bangalore or in Buenos Aires or in Silicon Valley? You've got a lot of issues around that. But I'd like to move it to that. Peter, you had your hand up first, and I know you want to comment on this, and then I want to start asking about some questions about where the big industries will be in the future. But yeah.
So to bring this back to the focus on SAP and mobility and cloud, the fact of the matter is that the rate of changing is increasing. The rate of change is increasing, period. And we're working into a day and age where the ability for, again, an individual or a small team to innovate and build a company is greater than ever before. The cloud and mobile computing, 3D printing, AI-enabled capabilities are going to allow for the birth of extraordinary industries. And the fact of the matter is, there is no industry that's safe. Medicine, I just got finished speaking to a group of 500 medical CEOs. Over the next 10 years, medicine is going to be completely redefined. And the fact of the matter is that when regulations are holding an industry back, like it is in medicine, it simply means it's going to be redefined in a different country. There are no boundaries anymore. Companies are multinational. Individuals are multinational. Ideas go across the globe at the speed of light. And we're going to see a rate of change that is not stopped by regulation, especially when governments can no longer regulate at the speed of change that's going on right now. So I think you're
doing a pretty good job from where I sit.
And it may actually be interesting to see, for example, one of the most regulated industries in the world is education. And the education industry itself is not immune from these disruptive forces. But Isabel, you wanted to comment, and if I may, what I'd like to do is I'd like to exploit your gender to say, let's talk a little bit about the role of women in the corporation of the future. And I hate to just put you on the representative spot, but you're on it. But as we think about some of these issues, let's talk about half of humanity, and is there a particular, are there things that we need to bear in mind as we look at the business in 10, 15 years? Are we going to see a step change finally in the participation of women in corporate life or in economic life generally?
His thoughts, and collect yours, because big companies will have less employees, and perhaps the reduction will come on the headquarters, because thanks to technology, we can have centralized processes, but not centralized headquarters. It can be decentralized. And that's part of the changes that we will have to face in the future, how to learn to deal without headquarters. Because people and talent will be distributed all over the world.
So the old centralization, decentralization debate is over. It's the wrong debate now. We can centralize and decentralize just as we can do business models in whole new ways.
That depends, according to efficiency, we will decide what to centralize, and according to the reach that we want to get, we will decentralize some other activities that make sense. But, it has nothing to do with a physical, big building, large people, that is somehow.
So if I put on my consultant hat, it's a 2x2 with efficiency and reach, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I have to do a 2x2 up, right? And so we have efficiency and we have reach and we have centralization and we have different solutions in organization design depending on how we make those trade-offs.
And new capabilities, because we will need to coordinate and to communicate in a different way.
I'd like to raise the larger issue of globalization, because that's what we're tiptoeing around. Let me give you two examples of globalization, Japan and India. In Japan, we have, in some sense, a negative example, where we have very large corporations that are incapable of making very small, rapid changes to the economy. And one reason why the Japanese economy is stagnating is because of the sclerotic distribution of goods, the fact that competition is not allowed. Rice, for example, is artificially propped up. It means that you cannot have a free marketplace. And that's one reason for the stagnation of Japan for the last 15 years. Now look at India. There was a big debate years ago in India about whether or not to set up an optical fiber network connecting India with the rest of the world. Fiber optic, state of the art. People said it's too much money. It's useless. India doesn't need such a thing. And now look, that is the lifeline, the lifeblood. The lifeblood of the new generation of Silicon Valleys in India is precisely because of the investment they made in the highest technology, getting fiber optic cables and getting India wired up to the rest of the world. And that's a challenge for all businesses, all nations. The playing field is going to be global. The playing field is going to be international. And unless you can compete on the international stage, you're going to be out faster than you realized. Because, yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you would finish, so I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
So what I'm saying is, in a situation where we have perfect capitalism, perfect knowledge, a knowledge about all products, goods, services, marketing, people's instincts to buy, and so on and so forth. In a situation where we have perfect capitalism, perfect knowledge, it means there's going to be enormous pressure on the global marketplace. And nations which cannot compete are going to see their economies stagnate, like what happened in Japan.
So let me ask you this question. We don't have too much time left, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to give each of you a choice